success, wealth, recognition. Gary Cooper had it all, lost it all, then turned a revolutionary discovery into the success paradox. Here's Gary.
I'm back with Matthew Lesser. He's been sharing with us his remarkable story of redemption after being given his family's oil business when he was just 23 years old, and the trials and tribulations he's experienced along the way. Now, Matt, I wanted to circle back to Darryl. You mentioned in part one of our talk the influence he had on your life and career. But was he the one that taught you how to become a leader and grow your business?
So in many ways, yes. He helped me with, how do you lead differently? I mean, and I talked, like I said, I was meeting with, probably at least a leader a week, if not two, asking about leadership. And we just began to, the business just began to grow. I wish I could say, Gary, that we had these elaborate strategic plans that we were executing on, but we didn't. We knew our business. I mean, we had done it as a family for many years, and so we knew what had to do. And so we just went out and did it. We just executed.
Did you rebrand?
We did rebrand completely.
Okay.
Well, rebrand, new company, everything. And so because there were three big issues, that there was a lot of trade debt, because the money was filtered out of the company. So so they had to, and it was so much debt I couldn't pay it. And then there was, we had some convenience stores, and a couple of them were leaking. I had some underground storage tanks that were leaking and polluting neighboring properties. So the EPA doesn't like that. And then
phase one, phase two, it's kind of hard. Yeah,
it does. And I had no money to clean it up. I mean, literally the part of the solution was, they came in and said, "Hey, I got no money. You can take me to court if you want. I have no money. So here's the keys. Here's the deed of the property. It's yours." And that was how I handled it.
Damn,
and
you had a handful.
Oh yeah. Well, the big one was, withholding tax wasn't paid for a year. And so, and the IRS,
the
they'll have the
government
money.
doesn't like that.
No. And they don't care who's sitting in the chair.
They do not.
I talk to them blue in the face and say, I didn't do this. They don't care because the company owed it.
That's right.
And so, so all that hit at once. And so as we emerged from it, Darryl did give us a loan to pay off the IRS. Now we negotiated some of the interest and penalties off, but we had to pay him. So he gave us a loan, and he also, the loan also included enough to pay our major vendor so that they would go with us in the new company. So then I owned the old company, because at that point I'm tainted. To this day, I don't own anything. It's all on my wife's name. And so I've often told her that if she chooses to leave me, I'm screwed. So, it is what it is, I guess. I trust her. And so
you better be a good boy.
Yeah, exactly right. There's a lot of motivation there. So I kept the old company and never actually filed bankruptcy, interestingly enough, because here's what happened, Gary. I was sued, I think 26 or 27 times. Every time I went to court, I had this amazing attorney, local guy, but he was brilliant, man. He was absolutely brilliant. He actually wound up working for Darryl later on before he passed away suddenly. It was a tragic. Anyway, he would literally, what we would do is we'd go to court, we'd get before the judge, and literally he would ask the judge if we could have a sidebar with the plaintiff. And so it was always granted. So we go into the side conference room, and literally my attorney would say, "Tell your story." And so I would share with the plaintiff what I've been sharing with you. Every single time, Gary, the case was dropped. Every time.
I'm reading a book called The Tools. Have you heard of this book?
I have not.
It's called The Tools, and there's a Netflix episode out with Jonah Hill.
Okay.
And it's his counselor.
Okay.
And one of the things they talk about is you have to go through the pain and not run from it. And if anybody learns a lesson from what you're sharing today, is you didn't run from it. You squared up, and you not only just embraced it, you just said, I'm going to stand, pay for the sins of my father's company. I'm going to own it.
Yep.
And not only did you turn a bad situation okay, you turned it better.
Looking back on it now, I mean, yeah, it's just my story, right? And so I wish I could tell you that I had those kinds of conscious thoughts in the moment, but I didn't. I
You're
wasn't
just doing.
thinking.
You're just
I was
putting one
just
foot in front of the other.
I was just trying to survive, man. I literally was just in survive for about 2 years. I was just in strict survival mode. I was just trying to figure out, okay, how do we grow this new business? How do I figure out how to deal with the crap from the past business?
Yeah,
I will tell you that over the course of the decade that we built the new business, we did wind up paying most of the debts of the first one.
that's incredible.
And so we did settle most of those. And so, which was good. I mean, I felt responsible for that, even though, like I said, I didn't cause it, but I still felt like, I didn't want to be screwed. I hated it when my customers filed bankruptcy on me. And so I didn't want to stiff other people as well. So
We've covered, I think the lesson is learned on what you did with that. That's absolutely incredible. But while you're doing that, you scaled another business. So you had 1 foot in the boat and 1 foot on the dock.
pretty much, yeah.
I mean, you didn't fall in the water. So you were scaling the other business and then put multiple locations out. You were a busy dude.
Yeah, it was busy. But here's the thing. It didn't feel busy. I think partly because we hired some amazing people.
Okay.
I've often believed in, I think part of this was mentoring. Part of this was, I think, just out of my own desire to learn and to grow, and knowing that there's so much I didn't know. What that experience taught me. Prior to going through it, I was a cocky, arrogant SOB. I was very good in school. I graduated top of my class, both high school and college, and then eventually got an MBA. And so academics, man, I ruled. And what that did for me is it inflated my ego falsely, and it gave me false confidence. And so I went into business then. I mean, literally when my dad's walking out the door, basically I'm like, good riddance, prick. I'm got this. And it was like, whoa. And honestly, Gary, I'm so looking back, I've been asked many times over the years, if you could rewrite your story, would you go through this again? And I say, absolutely yes, because I didn't like who I was then. I didn't know it all, but I didn't know that then, but I didn't like who I was. I've often said it's an absolute miracle that my wife even married me. What she would say to you is that she didn't marry who I was. She married who she thought I would become. And it's a powerful testimony. And so, I try to live into that every day. I screw up, I make mistakes, but that's she basically willed me into becoming something different. And so, going through that, and then honestly, then I had the mentoring, and I was in intensive therapy for over 6 years. And that's where I began to deal with my dad issues. But he and I didn't speak for over a decade. And then I actually went on this corporate retreat when I went into private equity, and just felt really led in my spirit and my heart that it's time to reach out, and it's time to see if there's any kind of reconciliation that can occur. But it took me a decade to learn to forgive him, and finally have the courage to reach out to him, because he wouldn't reach out to me. And so we did. We met. He got to meet his 3 grandkids who he never met before. And then about a year later, Gary, his life caught up with him. And he actually wound up going to jail for 5.5 years. And so he's still alive. I didn't testify at his sentencing. And so that kind of ended our relationship. He got very angry with me. And so we haven't spoken since. But, I honestly feel no anger toward him. I feel no ill will. I wish him well. I'm saddened that, we are where we are. He's missed some, 3 amazing kids. His grandkids grow up, and because they're 23, 20, and 17 now, and he's missed it. So it's his loss. He's missed some amazing kids.
I want to thank you for a couple of things. The gift that you've given me and being vulnerable. Saying those things isn't easy. I was talking to some people yesterday. We're starting a ministry at our church where we're going to start taking recovery into the prisons.
Oh, I love it.
And they're going to call it a God Pod. I think that's a cool name.
That's really cool. I love it.
Yeah. And I was sharing that with a board that I'm getting off. And I was nervous about telling the board that I'm getting off. It's education for kids K through 12. And they were all, like, a couple people teared up. And I'm like, I'm uniquely gifted in talking to people that have drinking and drug addiction problems. And it's almost like you and I went through these things. I don't think God punishes anybody for any reason.
No.
But I think that the challenges that we go through in life, whether it's eating disorders, whether it's the loss of someone that we love, or whether it's the problems that you and I had, if we look at them with a different set of glasses, we can use them for opportunities. And typically it's to help others. So one, I want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that, because that ain't easy. That takes a lot of courage. Number two, I got to that similar spot. I'm the young kid coming home from graduate school, going to work with my dad, and my dad was just a true Southern gentleman. If you look up Southern gentleman, picture my dad.
I love it.
And I think Southerners are very passive aggressive. Like that saying, well, bless your heart. That really means kiss my ass, you know?
I've heard that more than once.
Yeah. So I came home and I was aggressive like you, but I did it in probably a passive aggressive way. And he just allowed it to mature. But I didn't get humility until I was humiliated. And I feel like that's what I heard from you. You got to humility, but it came through a lot of humiliation, which gets me back to that point. If I'm driving down the road and I'm listening to this thing, you know, and my life's okay, and I'm climbing the corporate ladder, like somebody splashes water in their face and is like, you don't have to do what Matt and Gary did. I don't know if you have tools in your book or tools in your, toolbox. What are some tools that people can use?
Absolutely. Actually, both books, Gary, the complete third part of both books. So the first one, Unsatisfied When Less Is More. The second one, Unengaged, Building Flourishing Organizations. Both books, I dedicated the third part of the book to practical tools, examples, and exercises, because at my heart, I want to equip people, individuals and leaders. I want to equip them with practical tools, relevant tools that they can implement in their lives that will make a difference, that will help them change. The world doesn't need more conceptual books. Yes, my books have concepts, but they have constructs as well that help you implement the concepts in your life. And so the first book is all about how do you live a flourishing life? And it comes down to intentionality. You will not live a flourishing life if you're not intentional about it. It's what'll wind up happening is you'll wake up probably later in life and say, what just happened? What happened to my life? How did I get here? Mm-hmm. And so my hope and prayer is that I wrote the first book to the me that I wish I'd had when I was 20 years old. Now, the reality is I probably wouldn't have listened, because I was an arrogant kid, but I wrote the book that I wish I'd had. That would have helped me. But yes, that first book is full of exercises that you can do to really roll up your sleeves and evaluate your life. Where are you now? What's the trajectory that you're on? And if you don't like where you're headed, I use this example in the book. I believe that God gives us the pen to write our story. Now, he's with us, and I get that. But in somehow in his divine nature, he's given us the free will to write our story. And if you don't like the story you're writing, if you don't like where you think the ending's going to wind up, then put a period down right now, turn the page, and start writing the story that you want with the ending that you want. You can't change what's been written. That's history. It's done. But you can change the way that your story goes from here forward to the ending that you desire. So that's the first one. The second book is all about to leaders of how do you build flourishing organizations. And it starts with, you cannot build a flourishing organization, which is people. Organizations are people, organizations. You cannot build a flourishing organization if you're not a flourishing leader. And so it starts with the leader. And so how do you flourish as a leader? And then how do you build a culture in an organization where your team members, your employees, your people can also flourish? And again, practical tools, exercises, the complete third part's dedicated to that.
I mean, that's what I wish little Gary had, or old Gary, or I call him old Gary and new Gary, because old Gary was, like you described, arrogant, didn't plan anything, fly by the seat of his pants. I heard this quote the other day, Matt, 90% of the people spend a lot more time planning their vacation than they do their career.
Oof. Wow. It's a reality check.
So they go to work and they do their job, and they do their job well. But they don't think about where they want their career to be. They search jobs, They think, okay, I'll do this job, or I can go apply for this job, but they don't think about where their career wants to be 10 years from now. They're only thinking about the pay rate, the benefits, and the vacation time. That's a pretty powerful statement, but they can tell you everything they're going to do on day 1 and day 4 and day 7 on their vacation.
Wow.
I'm guilty of that. I'm not making fun of anybody.
I have
guilty.
too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to ask you what led you to coaching, but we have not covered your 12 years in private equity. So you sell the business that you grew, and then did you reach that top of the mountain and you're like, what the heck? What do I do? I mean, is that you?
So I did eventually, yeah. So I sold the business for a couple different reasons. So, my mom was my business partner, and she was battling cancer for many years, and she just got to the place where she was tired. And so she wanted me basically to buy out her house, and then my wife and I run it and go. And a couple things were happening, Gary, in my own life. One was I was beginning to get a little bored with it, and I wanted an opportunity to kind of stretch my wings and do something a little bigger. And so that was happening. The second thing was happening was we had grown the company to a point where we were beginning to get out of our niche market, beginning to get into bigger markets, and we were attracting the attention of large competitors. And so I had a choice to make, and it was either leverage everything and go for the bigger markets, which would put 200 lives at risk because for my ego basically. And so I couldn't come to that, and so sold it. So went to private equity because I wanted a job, and my friend, my mentor, wanted me to come, so I did. Literally, that was the only thought I had in it. I didn't have a thought that I was climbing some mountain or climbing some ladder. It was just like, okay, what do I do next? Oh, okay, this looks interesting. Travel the world, meet new businesses, and invest money and meet leaders, invest in leaders. Hey, that sounds like fun. Let's do it. And so I did that, and did that for 12 years, and absolutely loved it. And honestly, I thought I'd retire there. As just happens, toward the latter part, probably the last 3 years I was there, I began to sense that maybe God was calling me to something different. Didn't exactly know what. Same thing though, I was traveling, I was gone many, many weeks a year, and my oldest son graduated high school. We were putting together his, picture portfolio, and literally it was like, okay, I don't remember this, so where was I in this one? And my wife just said, honey, you're not here much. And it completely wrecked me. And so I knew the status quo wasn't acceptable, and I had to do something different with my life. I didn't know what. And so I did that. I hobbled along for about 3 more years and finally resigned. And it surprised everybody. Nobody thought that I would ever leave. Surprised me too. And honestly, it kind of wrecked my relationship with my mentor because he didn't see it coming either. So I don't regret that.
So the private equity, you focused on a lot of different businesses. Is that what helped you, do you think, culminate into this repertoire that you have for coaching?
It was that my passion for leadership. I saw, because I talked with and I worked in so many different businesses, I just naturally gravitated towards leadership development. Whether or not we invested or not, I was passionate about healthy leadership teams working together to really make an impact in the people that they serve. And so I just naturally did that. And so then over time, as I was developing leaders, literally my colleagues, my friends, my family, they were all saying, you really should consider doing this on your own. You're passionate about it. You're good at it. You just naturally are able to bring out things in people by the questions you ask. I'm a trained and certified coach, but even when I did that more because I wanted to have the certification. It wasn't. I was naturally already doing it.
People underestimate the amount of time in private equity that we spend at dinners and lunches and breakfasts and talking about family and football and whatever the sport is. And there's so much emotional intelligence that goes in deal making.
You're building relationships nonstop.
Absolutely. I think people around the water cooler in offices don't understand that either. I'll give you a quick story. We hired a person at our company recently, Palmetto Infusion. He comes in the first day, he says he's buying $1 million house.
Wow.
Around people that don't make the amount of money to buy that type of home.
Ooh.
He immediately put a target on his back. Then he goes into a meeting within a month and accidentally posts everybody's salaries.
Oh my gosh.
He was here less than 3 or 4 months. He was a senior VP.
Oh, wow.
And so what I hope you and I can teach folks is, I don't know why I'm thinking that you and I need to teach folks. What I hope that I've learned over the time is that young cocky Gary, I've gotten smacked by doing stupid shit like that.
Amen, brother. Me too.
You know, and I hope by being an example saying I've done stupid crap like that too, maybe that can help people learn from my mistakes or sharing mistakes of others. You got any comments on that?
You're like singing my song. I mean, this is, I'm with you 100%. Whenever I talk with other leaders in particular, I think one of the reasons, Gary, that people open up when I'm talking with them is because I'm willing to share my shit. I'm willing to say, here you go, here's my life. Guess what? I've made mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. And it's okay. It's okay to say, hey, guess what? I've experienced failure. I've experienced disappointment. I've experienced a clinical suicidal depression, for crying out loud. I'm still here. By the grace of God, I'm still here. I'm drawing in breath in my lungs. And so when people ask me, I know that if I have a potential client call and they ask me, okay, well, where did you get your coaching certification? Are you trained with blah, 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 blah? That's probably not going to become a client of mine because they're more concerned about certification than they are the story. Because when you're able to open up your life to somebody else and all of a sudden they realize, oh, wow, this person gets it. He's safe. I can share my crap. Now, all of a sudden, we have tremendous influence. We can influence that person and help them, come alongside them and actually walk step by step and help them to a different place. And I think that's what we're called to do. You know, I believe that we're given stories. I think, Gary, you're given your story. You've gone through your stuff in life. I've gone through my stuff in life. For me to just sit on my hands and do nothing with it, or to not even attempt to try to do what I'm doing now, I feel like that's not being a steward. You know, there's more. Stewardship is more than about money. I believe that I've been given a story and experiences in my life that, I'm not going to say they're unique because a lot of people go through a depression with it, but my story is unique. It's unique to me. And I believe that I'm called to steward that story for influence whenever I'm allowed to.
The word stewardship makes a lot of sense to me because I would go back to that gratitude. I feel like I've been given a chance to live 2 lives in one lifetime.
I love that.
I honestly feel like that. And when I was busy chasing the things that I thought the American dream promised,
yeah,
I actually was pretty good at catching them. The traditional American way.
Sure.
Work hard, boy. Don't cry, boy. When going get stuff, work harder.
Yep.
Grind. Use caffeine. Use whatever it takes. Do those business dinners until midnight and then wake back up at 6 o'clock in the morning and be there and grind.
Yep.
And I ran 60 miles a week and I was successful and it worked. But I was like you. I was that guy, like you described. I was that guy at the top of the mountain saying, is it really worth it? And then, my family was really saying, dude, we don't know who you are.
Yeah. Wow.
And we don't like you.
Wow.
Then I had some amazing people, and it is not a coincidence. You can call it God. I do. You can call it fate. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you call it. But I think the only thing that I did, and the only thing that I tell people that they really have to do is just be willing.
Yeah. Love it.
Just be willing. And I was willing. My life sucked so bad. And I was willing to listen to somebody else.
Oh, man. That's beautiful.
And I didn't know what they were doing, but I was willing to do what they did because I wanted what they had.
Man, that's so cool.
They had peace in their life.
Oh,
Their family loved them. And, going back to your point about you lost balance in your life with the private equity firm, and Darryl will come back. He will recognize that. And I had to figure out how to get that. My factory default settings is set on wide ass open. It's like there's a setting on WOA. and
I'm going to use that, man, because that's me.
yeah. And I think a lot of our settings are on WOA. So I had to put in, I asked you about practical solutions for people to not do what Gary did. I had to put in practical solutions in the morning. I have to wake up and spend 30 minutes in the morning to say, you're not running the show, dude.
That's so good.
Like quiet time.
Yep.
In the beginning, I actually got some like Buddha stuff and like had incense and all kinds of stuff. I don't do that anymore. But like literally I had to slow my brain down.
Yeah.
And say, you're not God.
That's right.
I really hope that you and I don't have to be the extreme example. I think you and I might have been 3 standard deviations off the chart. But there's plenty of people in the median that can use the tools that are in your book, and say, look, I can improve not only my business life, but my family life.
Absolutely.
You don't have to miss your kids' pictures to be successful in life. I combat the thing. It's easy for me to say because I've been fortunate, but I started that when my life really sucked the worst.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, you're, like I said, you're singing my song, man. You're talking my language.
I knew we would.
I think for me, Gary, it comes down to intentionality. And, I've lived my life both ways. I've lived it without intentionality and I've lived it with, and with is so much better.
So what is an example when you say intentionality? Do you have a written format? Do you have what is something that you've done? I'll give you an example of what I've done while you think about it.
Okay.
So I read The Key to Living the Law of Attraction by Jack Canfield.
Good
and
book.
Great book. And I kind of made it my own. And I realized that I was better at running my business than I was my life. So this was almost 7 years ago. So he helps you build a manifestation about your life. If you manifest things or you live the law of attraction, it will come into your life. And he almost calls it like a bucket list.
Wow.
Well, I changed it and I created a mission, vision, and values for my life, just like a business. And then a 1 year, 3 year, and 7 year goals for my life, just like a business. And what that did for me, I didn't realize at the time, but what that did for me, I don't have ADD, but I'm probably close because I chase a lot of squirrels. But what that did for me is when a squirrel would come by, I could say no to.
Yep.
So if an investment came by and it looked really sexy, I could say, whoa, that's not on my list.
Yeah.
It sounds cool. Or a nonprofit board that would come around and it would seem really cool. Ego kicks in. Hey, Gary, that would be cool.
Yeah.
That would make you look really cool.
Yeah.
Then I would look back at my 1 year goal, 3 year goal. It's not on there. And I could politely say no. So that's my form of intentionality. So I've given you some time, man.
Well, it's actually very similar. So I didn't go down to the level of detail I said in 1, 3, and 7 year goals. What it did do is what kickstarted it for me was right in the heart of COVID. I was coming out of at this point, I had been out of private equity now for about 2 years and was really struggling, quite frankly, to find out, okay, who am I and what am I supposed to do? So made a very, very poor decision to take a job after private equity that was based solely on the level of income. Terrible decision. And it wound up being a train wreck.
Makes sense, though.
So then coming out of that, a good friend of mine gave me a book called Sacred Rhythms. And I read it twice, literally like 2 days in a row, and just gobbled it up and began to realize, you know what? I'm off center. I don't know who I am. I don't know my identity. My identity was all about what I did, right? It was about I traveled the world. Oh, you work at private equity. Oh, I mean, there's a certain prestige to that. And I realized that I was completely off center. And so I really dove in, and I've been on this journey now for about 3 years of really getting centered. Okay, who am I? And really solidifying my identity. And then out of that, it's okay, what am I passionate about? And what are my values? And what's my mission in life? What is my unique calling? Why am I here at this time in life? I talk about it. In fact, it's actually one of the exercises in the book. What's my why? And when I was able to clearly articulate that, it's still a work in process, but it's mostly articulated, and identify my core values, what I stand for, what I believe in, and then my mission. And to your point, now I know, okay, I can say yes to these things because it's in the lane of my mission, my calling, my values. But it's empowered me big time, even more so, to say no. To your point, if I was just asked recently to serve on a nonprofit board, and I considered it because, and honestly, it came down to prestige. And it's like, okay, and literally I had a good friend ask me, is like, does that align to who you are and your passion? And I'm like, no. Like, well, there's your answer. So I said no. So that's what I've been doing, and just living according to that. And now this business that I just lost like less than 3 years ago, it's a direct result of all that work, because for the first time in my life and my career, I'm doing what I really believe God has called me and uniquely equipped me to do.
Matt, I'm convinced of two things. One, I'm convinced that you're going to be successful at Uniquely Normal. I'm just convinced. I believe that there's this energy in the world. And here's how I describe it. We've all seen birds, eagles or big birds, fighting against the wind. And that's how young Gary, and I think so many people in the world are just like us, fought against that wind. You were fighting against the wind. And then all of a sudden they can turn and then use the wind to just soar.
Oh, man, yeah.
And I think I did that fighting to get my way, taking a job just because of money, taking a board seat just to look cool, climbing the ladder, whatever it is, trying to fit in social situations that I don't really enjoy, but I think I need to be there, and feeling uncomfortable as hell the whole time I'm there. But then I start saying no, and I've turned with the wind, and then all of a sudden doors start opening. Those coincidences start happening. Me and you meeting is not a coincidence. What you were talking about, I believe, if you teach that more often to more groups, if you start teaching that about how to remember that we are human beings, not human doings. Because I confuse my identity with how much money I made, with, what my job was, with what kind of car I drove, and all that baloney. We're human beings. And it's kind of what I was saying earlier. When I built my character, anything that I want comes. But when I try to go get what I want, I lose all of my character.
Wow, that's so true.
Man, you preach that all day long and the world is going to be a better place.
I hope so. I really do.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for being on the Success Paradox podcast today. I feel like we're brothers.
Gary, it's been such an honor and a pleasure. I agree with you, man. It's like we're I don't believe this is a coincidence, and I love what you're doing. I love your story. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for having me on.
He is Matthew Lesser, and his book, Unengaged, Building Flourishing Organizations is available now on Amazon. And that wraps up another episode of The Success Paradox. If you like the show, please take a moment to subscribe so you'll get notified when I release new episodes. Also, if you have a moment, I'd love it if you left us a review so that other incredible individuals like yourself can learn about the show. I'll see you next time.
To learn and practice the Success Paradox lifestyle, visit GaryCCooper.com. The Success Paradox is a production of Forbes Books.